Carine McCandless is author of the book The Wild Truth, a follow-up to Jon Krakauer's bestseller Into the Wild. Today we're chatting through the past, present, and future of Bus 142, made famous by the book and film. Hi, Carine.
Hi, how you doing today?
Good. So what does Bus 142 mean to you?
Oh, well, I actually have to sort of set aside what it means to me personally to stay focused on all of the reasons that it means so much to everybody else. I do a lot of volunteer work and put a lot of effort into, now what's become a project of the Museum of the North. And I think that it really is a symbol to so many people all over the world of freedom and adventure and breaking free of societal norms. And really, I think in large part, it's a symbol of people being true to their own spirit. So whether that has to do with actually being in the wilderness or just getting into the wilds of outside of their own comfort zones.
It's kind of a tough balance, combining something that has a really close personal connection to you and now something that's become a bit of an artifact or a museum piece. How does that feel to you?
It's kind of par for the course. I mean, when Jon wrote Into the Wild, Chris died in 92 and it was published in 96. And I definitely wasn't expecting his story to resonate with so many people all over the world. And I've come, though, to, as difficult as it is to grieve the loss of someone that means so much to you, I've come to appreciate and be grateful for having so many messages from people all over the world for the past 30 years about how he's inspired them, because not many people get the gift of that to accompany that grief. So I've learned to be grateful for it.
Yeah. And what does it feel like to you to see it be preserved and all the messages and sort of like this entire community around Bus 142 set aside in the Museum of the North?
Gosh, for me, it's really surreal. It's very emotional. I certainly never expected it to end up in a museum. I think that, it should be a catalyst. There's a lot of people that are really upset that it was removed. And I think to those people, I would say, let it be a catalyst to you to find your own adventure. Chris certainly didn't go down the Stampede Trail in search of the bus. He had no idea that it had been abandoned there in the 60s by a construction crew that abandoned work on a antimony mining road. And he didn't expect to see it. He didn't go searching for that. He was searching for what he needed out in the wilderness, as many people do. And I think that it's why he referred to it as the magic bus. So the bus just sort of became this symbol, based on his surprise to find it. And of course, him tragically passing away there.
Yeah, well, you talk about finding your own adventure. I'm curious how that has come up in your own life, how you've managed to find healing through adventure and outdoor connection.
Well, I've just always felt the most at peace. I'm a very spiritual person. I'm involved with my church a lot, but to me, the earth itself, the trees, the animals, the sky, that's church. And I know from my own experiences talking with Chris that he felt the same way. So when we were growing up, we had a very violent and dysfunctional household. And but my parents also taught us a lot about being outdoors, and they took us on a lot of hiking trips. And that's where the dysfunction always seemed to cease. And it was always a healing space. And it's remained to be that for me, for sure. And I try to teach that to my children.
Do you hope that this bus can maybe be sort of a symbol of hope and healing for other people?
Well, I can tell you for sure it already is. Just based on the messages that I get from people all over the world that I have for decades, I think the state of Alaska, through their assignment of its care to the Museum of the North, they understand that it's become this symbol of the study of the human experience and why we crave these immersive experiences out in nature. And, so many people are drawn to Alaska for those experiences. So I think that the bus will serve in large part as an examination of why that is.
Bus 142 hasn't been restored, it's been conserved. What does that actually mean, and why is that important?
So whenever a museum has an artifact, and again, I don't want to speak for the museum, but I've learned a lot and how to speak museumese. And it's very important with these artifacts to preserve all of its history. So primarily when you look at bus 142, for example, you have the graffiti that's all over the inside of the bus, and how important it was to preserve that graffiti, because so much of it came before Chris ever found the bus, and then so much of it has come after Chris. So, the graffiti is an important element to the complete story of bus 142 that the state of Alaska is utilizing as, a symbol to the study of the human experience and why we crave these immersive experiences in nature, the healing elements of those experiences, and why so many people come to the state of Alaska for those experiences. So I think that it was imperative for them to work hard to restore all of that story. Chris's, the popularity of the Into the Wild story and Chris's part of his short time at the bus just highlights and brings attention to a lot of very important lessons that come from the stories that everybody has shared. And that's why we do so much with the Friends of Bus 142 website also, to give everybody an opportunity to tell their stories about why they were connected to Chris's story, but also just why are they connected to nature? Why are they connected to the state of Alaska?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. When you restore almost any other artifact, you would likely be erasing the graffiti. Why is it so important to preserve other people's interactions with this artifact?
Significantly, because it's not just Chris's story. I mean, the Into the Wild story serves to highlight, it's got such a large audience, so it'll bring attention to all of the important things that are attached to the bus. The museum is part of the University of Alaska, so it's also going to be used to teach students about wilderness survival, and also to help with people dealing with the issues of childhood trauma, other kinds of trauma, mental health issues, things that are important that can all be paired together. And a lot of the reasons why people find themselves, immersed in these extreme outdoor experiences. So I think that the museum is doing a very good job in taking care to, they like to say it's preserving and conserving and not use the word restoring. But of course, certain elements had to be restored in order to make it safe for people to come and to visit it and walk inside of it and touch it at the museum exhibit itself, and which will be open hopefully in fall of 2025. But they had a lot to battle with. They have to also honor the history of those that don't like Chris's story, and they don't like it bringing attention to Alaska. So there was that part as well.
Yeah, it's complex, but it seems like the story is really continuing to resonate with people and still garner a lot of attention with folks. Why do you think your brother's story continues to resonate in this day and age?
I think so many of the elements of Chris's story resonated with people. It's just timeless. The things that Jon wrote about in Into the Wild have just proven to be timeless. The book is required reading in thousands of schools across the country. And, that resonance has sort of changed over time. And while some elements of it remain consistent, part of why I wrote my book in 2014 was because I had worked with so many students over the years at these schools. And when they had so many questions about Chris, about what I learned from him, but tons of questions about our childhood and what drove him to make these choices and what drove him to take these extreme risks out in the wilderness. And when I shared the full story with them, I saw what a difference it made to them to have those blanks filled in and to have the rest of the story. And the most important thing was that so many of these students that themselves were suffering from some sort of childhood trauma, domestic violence, extreme family dysfunction, it really meant a lot to them to understand that they weren't alone. And I've never left one school in all these decades I've been doing this. I've never left one school where at least one student didn't reach out for help. And so it really came to a point where I could not share the rest of the story. So I think it's this exhibit and everything else is just going to further expand on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Carine. I think you've really helped us kind of widen our lens on this story as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.